For my Irish Lit final, I'm going to be interviewing Margaret O'Driscoll, my best friend's mom. I've known her my whole life, so if I had to interview anyone, it'd be her. She's from County Cork in a small town called Drina. So, yeah. First question is, where did you grow up in Ireland?
In a small village in County Cork called Drina.
Can you describe what it was like growing up there and any childhood memories you have?
It was a really bustling small village with a local creamery being the center of the village and the center of industry. The farming would be the main thing that people did, and everything centered around the creamery because of that. Dairy farming. Then we walked to school, we walked to church, we had wonderful, easygoing summers. There was a lot of kids around the place, big families. People would have had 7, 8, 9, 10 children per family, all in a small village. Mm-hmm. So there was lots of kids around and lots of fun. There was lots of local festivals, singing and dancing. What else, Dad?
What was your favorite part?
What was my favorite part? The summers and all my cousins coming home from England and everybody getting together. My parents, we would always have visitors, always have people coming to visit, and my parents sitting around chatting about old times and laughter. And it was lovely. There was very little TV. I can remember when we got our first TV, I was about 7.
Aww.
In the village. Before that, my brothers would go to a local kind of small candy store. The lady used to let everybody in go and watch TV at her house.
Aww.
That was kind of the only TV in the village, and the first TV that we ever got was a black and white TV. There wasn't even a color TV.
That's crazy.
There was all open fires, and so, a big part of the day would be making the fires. We grew all our own vegetables. We had our own milk. Lots chickens, eggs, lots of our own eggs, our own vegetables. We had all the animals, the baby animals on the farm would become our pets, really, because that's the way it was. We had cats and dogs, and for years, my grandfather was alive when I was very young. He died when I was about 5.
Aww.
And I can remember he died at home in the house. My father's mother lived with us for about 10 months when I was young as well. She also died in the house, and all my aunts and uncles were there. Mm-hmm. I didn't like her very much.
Is that the one you didn't like, Margaret?
And I can remember the night that she died so distinctly, because I said, yes, 3 days off school, she's gone.
That's good. It's very sad.
Oh my God.
Margaret was delighted.
Oh, that's awesome. So, circling back when you said you got your TV, what would you consider was poor then versus now? Because, we read a lot about poverty in Irish Lit. So, what would you consider was, poor then versus now?
Well, we were poor. We were poor in monetary terms. Mm-hmm. So the way the farmers worked is that we would have an account in the local creamery, and our milk would go to pay for our groceries and all that. So we always had an account, whether we were always in the red or whatever. I knew we never felt poor because that was all that we knew. And I can remember, let's say I grew very fast because I was pretty tall. So I grew very fast. And I can remember I would wear my shoes. I would have one pair of shoes, and I would wear my shoes until I actually grew out of them, and that there would be a hole on the front of them where my toe would come through. Yeah. And I can remember being worried about asking my mom for another pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Because we were conscious of the fact that there wasn't money, but we never felt poor. I never felt poor.
Well, because everyone around you was the same, I would guess.
Yes. Yeah. And there were some bigger farmers, obviously. There were wealthier farmers, but that was just the way it was. So we were happy. We never really felt it. And then we never owned a car. We walked everywhere. We had a tractor. And we never had a car until my brothers were old enough to drive. And then we got a car and they used to drive us.
Yeah.
And then, growing up, so it's interesting. Henry Ford's father was from a village close by where we grew up.
Yeah.
And the first Ford factory outside of the United States was in County Cork, Ireland, was in Cork City.
Really?
Yes, and it's very interesting if you read up the history of it. It's so interesting. And then because of that, a tire factory, Dunlop Tires, was it that? Yeah, opened a factory as well to provide tires for Ford. So that brought a lot of prosperity to kind of Cork County back when there was nothing there. So it's really interesting, the history between the Ford motor car and County Cork. The first Ford motor car was called the Fairlane, and it
That's right, the Ford Fairlane. I've heard of that.
Yeah, that was the first Ford motor car, and that was named after the last street in Cork City that Henry Ford's dad stayed the night before he emigrated.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and in Ballinascarty, where he came from, there's a Model T car there. There's a monument to him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting. The second Ford factory outside of the United States was in Dagenham in England, and three of my uncles immigrated to work there, my father's brothers.
Oh, wow.
So, the history is very interesting.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that.
Getting back to being poor, it was poor for sure, but everybody was poor except for, the larger farmers and whatever. But we didn't feel poor.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you, Margaret. When did you come to America, and what was your experience like traveling?
So I immigrated. I landed here on the 4th of July, 1985. It was my first time. Yes. And it was 35 years ago this summer.
Oh, wow.
And it was my first time on an airplane.
Ooh, you took the plane.
It makes me cry just to think about that. I don't know why.
And I sat beside a girl whose dad was a pilot. And we were chatting, as I still do. And I got to go up into the cockpit with her because her dad was a pilot. The air hostess took us up into the cockpit. So I actually got to go up into the cockpit my very first flight.
Airplane ride. That's awesome.
Yeah,
How old
pretty
were
cool.
you?
I was 18 and a half.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's... Do you still know the girl that sat next to you?
No.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So this is like when you were in America, have you experienced any stereotypes, and like what is your opinion on them, and do you agree with any?
Stereotypes as regards Americans?
Like regarding like, do Americans make like stereotypes like surrounding the Irish culture? And like, do you agree with any, or what are your opinions?
Oh yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Right. So my very first St. Patrick's Day here, I went into work, and my boss said to me, "Why aren't you wearing green?" And I said, "Well, why would I be wearing green?" Well, she said it's St. Patrick's Day, and I said, "Well, we don't wear green in Ireland on St. Patrick's Day. It's just St. Patrick's Day. We go to church. It's a church holiday, and there's usually football on TV or something. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's only really outside of Ireland that it's such a huge deal, which I would have never known about any of that until I came here.
That's so interesting.
And, you know, we've embraced it all now. And in Ireland, I think it's bigger now, more so for a tourist attraction than what it used to be as well. But it's really the Irish in America that have made it big here. When I first was working for my first family that I worked for, when I would speak to my friends on the phone, they used to think I was speaking Gaelic because I spoke so fast.
Spoke so fast. Yeah.
The thing about the Irish in America, there has always been a huge respect for the Irish in America.
Yeah.
Maybe not right at the beginning. I mean, no Irish Need Apply obviously was part of it, and we were immigrants. But we are immigrants who speak English and who work hard for the most part. And, you know, we've always been welcomed here. So I never felt anything but welcomed and loved. That's from good. The day I came here.
That's good.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered moving back to Ireland?
We used to for many years. That was our goal.
Really?
Yeah, and even when we moved into the house that we're living in now, we almost went after a year. So that would be about 20 years ago. We were buying a house back there, and we almost went, but then we decided not to do it last minute. And then Rory was already at St. Stephen at the time.
Yeah.
And we decided not to do it, and we've kind of never looked back from that. Once we I would describe it as crossing a bridge. Yeah. For many years, when you come, you're at the beginning of the bridge and you want to go back. Yeah. And then you you go along and you kind of move on to the bridge in steps, and then you're on the threshold of the bridge. Yeah. And you either go or you stay, but we didn't cross it. We didn't do it.
So that's like
so many people did and have come back here.
Yeah. That's like another question I have, like, because we read a lot about like paralysis. Like, a lot of people feel like they're stuck in Ireland. So do you think that's still a thing? Like, have you ever experienced that? Because we read a lot about paralysis.
I would say that that's the same for a lot of places you live in the world, and definitely there is a paralysis for a lot of people who, like my brother as an example, who kind of inherited the farm and his future was mapped out for him. Yeah. But not so much for the rest of us. Yeah. You know, there are certain parts of society that will always be paralyzed by history and by their families and by, you know, their inheritance and everything else, but not so much for the rest of us who really had nothing to hold us there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. I just have 2 more questions. Thank you, Margaret. You're doing awesome. A common Irish motif we read about was using humor to make situations better. Do you think that is a common thing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of you guys do that. And yeah. And
even on the worst days.
Exactly. Like, when I lose Gaelic football games, the coaches are always making fun after. Do you have any this is my last one. Do you have any favorite Irish stories, like Hugh Cullen, or like Irish myths you know about?
The Ford Factory one would be my favorite story.
That was really interesting. I didn't know that until before.
Yeah, it's because it pertains very much to America and the history. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, okay. It is really. And if you research that more, there are so many facts regarding it. It's so interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm going to after this. Thank you. That's awesome.
And then another thing is, look up a movie called Made in Dagenham. Made in Dagenham, Dagenham, and it's about women's rights and women. They went out. It was the first strike ever where women, long before it was in the United States, where they fought for equal wages, and it was in the Ford factory.
Oh.
In Dagenham. So there's kind of a links the history to that as well. If you can add that in there, it's really, really interesting for you to know that as well. And it's a movie. Sandy, you should watch it as well. It's so interesting.
Yeah,
so
I will.
These group of women, long before it ever became a worldwide thing to fight for equal wages, they did it there.
That's awesome. I didn't no idea about that.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
So that's all. Thank you so much, Margaret.
All right. Happy to help.
Thank you,
Love
Margaret.
you guys.
Are you guys still on your way home?
We're on our way to our building now for the inspection.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. Good luck with that.
All right.
Love
Bye,
you.
lovey.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
So that was it. I think it went really well. I learned a lot about her that I didn't know, and I'll talk more in my reflection.